Drainage means the river system in a particular area. A river system consists of the total area covered by the tributaries and other water bodies that join the main river. Similarly, a drainage basin is an area drained by a single river system. This eventually drains into a large water body, such as a lake, sea, or an ocean. The drainage basin works as a funnel by collecting all the water within the area and channeling it into a waterway. If you look at this natural mechanism closely, you will observe that river water flows downhill. For example, if you notice the river Ganga, it flows down from the Himalayas along the northern plains, collecting water from all its tributaries along the way, and finally draining into the Bay of Bengal. Incidentally, the Ganga basin is the largest river basin in India. Did you know? The largest river basin in the world is the Amazon River Basin. Along the path of a river, the landscape is not always even. You will see upland or mountain ranges separating two drainage basins. This upland area is known as a water divide or the drainage divide. For example, if you trace the Ganga upwards, you will come across a tributary of the river, the Son River. The elevated area that you see in between is the Kaimur range, and hence this area can be called as a water divide. Drainage systems in India can broadly be categorized as Himalayan rivers, and peninsular rivers. What do you think are the key differences between the two systems? As you can see, the Himalayan rivers are fed by the snow melting from the mighty Himalayas and also seasonal rains. And hence, these are perennial rivers. Himalayan rivers travel along the way from their source towards the sea. Along their way, they cut deep gorges, resulting in scenic views. The valley seen here is formed by the Ganga in the mountainous regions of Devaprayag in Uttaranchal. These rivers also cause massive erosions along their path and carry loads of silt and sand along the upper courses. In the middle and lower courses, they cause meanders and oxbow lakes. On the other hand, peninsular rivers originate in the central highlands of the peninsula and depend solely on the rains, and therefore are seasonal. For example, the Govali, which flows into the Mandovi River in Goa, runs dry during the summer. During the dry seasons, even large rivers have a reduced flow of water in their channels. These are also shallower as compared to the Himalayan rivers. The Narmada is a large peninsular river that originates in Madhya Pradesh. As seen here, the Narmada has a reduced flow during the summer season. Now let us look at different drainage patterns that are formed due to drainage basins. The four main patterns that you will notice are dendritic drainage, rectangular drainage, trellis drainage, and radial drainage. The dendritic drainage pattern develops when the river follows the slope of the terrain. As you can see, the stream with its tributaries resembles the branches of a tree. Hence, the name dendritic. For example, the drainage system formed by the rivers draining into the Bay of Bengal. On the other hand, a river joined by its tributaries at approximately right angles develops a trellis pattern. For example, the Parana River in Brazil. This type of pattern develops when hard and soft rocks are present parallel to each other. Another type of drainage pattern is the rectangular drainage pattern, which develops on a strongly jointed rocky terrain. On this type of terrain, the streams follow the easiest available course and thus get concentrated in the areas where the exposed rocks are the weakest. For example, if you observe a satellite image of one of the rivers in Georgia in the United States, you will clearly notice the rectangular drainage patterns. The next type is the radial drainage pattern and is very different from all the others. It has a central peak or a dome-like elevation, from where the water flows in different directions. The Taranaki drainage system in New Zealand is a remarkable example of the radial drainage system. Here, Mount Taranaki is the central peak, from where the streams flow in different directions, forming a radial pattern. The three important Himalayan rivers are the Ganga, the Brahmaputra, and the Indus. These rivers are among the longest and largest rivers in the world. These rivers, along with their tributaries, make up the most important river systems for India and also the neighboring countries. We will first look at the Indus River system. The Indus originates in Tibet from Lake Mansarovar. As you can see, it starts out with its first tributary, the Satluj. From here, it flows west and enters India through Ladakh. The picturesque valley you see here is the result of the continuous flow of the Indus. Here, the Indus is further strengthened by its tributaries, like the Zanskar River. The other tributaries that join the Indus in the Kashmir region are the Nubra, the Shyok, and the Hansa. The Indus then passes through Baltistan and Gilgit, located right on the border between India and Pakistan. The main tributaries like the Satluj, the Beas, the Ravi, the Chenab and the Jhelum join the Indus at Mithankot in Pakistan. The confluence of these rivers now flows further south and drains into the Arabian Sea, eastwards from Karachi city. The Indus covers a distance of 2,900 kilometers before reaching its destination. Although largely in Pakistan, approximately 1/3 of the Indus River system is located in the Indian states of Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, and Punjab. In 1960, Jawaharlal Nehru and Muhammad Ayub Khan, the President of Pakistan, signed a treaty known as the Indus Water Treaty. According to this treaty, India could use 20% of the total water carried by the Indus River system. India's share of the water is mainly used for irrigation in Punjab, Haryana, and the southern and western parts of Rajasthan. Now let's look at the Ganga river system. The river Ganga, as we know, is the longest river in India and originates from the Gangotri Glacier in the Himalayas. The Ganga starts off as the Bhagirathi and is joined by the Alaknanda at Devaprayag in Uttaranchal. The river then emerges onto the northern plains at Haridwar. The major tributaries that strengthen the Ganga are the Yamuna, which starts out from the Yamunotri Glacier in the Himalayas and runs parallel to the Ganga, and finally joins it at Allahabad. The other tributaries are the Ghagara, the Gandak, and the Kosi rivers. All these rivers originate in the Nepal Himalayas. These rivers make the soil fertile, but are also capable of flooding, which causes widespread damage in the region. Not all tributaries of the Ganga originate from the Himalayas though. There are some, like the Chambal, the Betwa, and the Son, which start out from the semi-arid areas in the peninsular uplands. They are heavily dependent on the rains, and hence do not carry much water with them. They also run much shorter courses than their Himalayan counterparts. The peninsular tributaries that join the Ganga are the Chambal and the Betwa rivers. The river Son joins the Ganga in Bihar. The Ganga, now strengthened by all its tributaries, flows eastwards as a single river till Farakka in West Bengal. Farakka, the great river breaks into a distributary known as the Bhagirathi Hooghly and finally drains into the Bay of Bengal. The main stream of the Ganga flows southwards into Bangladesh. By now, the Ganga has travelled a distance of over 2,500 kilometers from its source. In Bangladesh, it is joined by the Brahmaputra. Both these rivers join to form the massive Meghna River. At the mouth of these rivers in the Sundarban Delta, the world's largest delta. If we trace the Ganga river system back, you will notice a familiar pattern. Can you identify it? As you may recall studying in the earlier module, this pattern is known as the dendritic drainage pattern. Another interesting feature you will notice about the path of the Ganga from the Ambala water divide is that the river meanders a lot before reaching Sundarban. Why do you think that is? The distance between Ambala and Sundarban is about 1,800 kilometers. The slope along the path is very gentle, about 1 meter for every 6 kilometers. The flow of water is very slow, and as a result, the river develops large meanders. The next river system that we will discuss is the Brahmaputra river system. Like the Indus, the Brahmaputra also starts in Tibet, very close to the source of the Indus, from the east of the Mansarovar lake. The Brahmaputra river is slightly longer than the Indus and flows its course eastwards parallel to the Himalayas. A major difference we see here with the Ganga is that the Brahmaputra flows a course mostly outside of India. It enters India from Arunachal Pradesh through a gorge. In order to come into India, the Brahmaputra makes a U-turn at the Namcha Barwa in Tibet. From here, the Brahmaputra gathers strength through its tributaries. First, the Dihang, which is then joined by the Dibang, and later by the Lohit rivers. These are some of the main tributaries that eventually form the Brahmaputra in Assam. The large volume of water also carries along considerable amount of silt. The intricate channels and the raised riverbeds made by this silt form the many riverine islands in Assam. The largest riverine island in the world is also located here. The island has an area of around 400 square kilometers and is home to around 1,40,000 people. During the rains, however, the river banks usually overflow and flood several places in Assam and Bangladesh, causing widespread damage. The terrain of India. You will notice the prominent Western Ghats that run from the north to the south, parallel to the western coast. These Western Ghats make up an important water divide in peninsular India. The major rivers in peninsular India are the Mahanadi, the Godavari, the Krishna, and the Kaveri, which flow eastwards and drain into the Bay of Bengal. On the other hand, the two major rivers that flow westward and drain into the Arabian Sea are the Narmada and the Tapi. Both these rivers also form estuaries along the western coast. Estuaries are coastal bodies of water formed by the ocean and have one or more rivers flowing into it. The Narmada originates in the Amarkantak Hills located in Madhya Pradesh from a small tank called the Narmada Kund. Along its path of over 1,300 kilometers, the Narmada creates some of the most picturesque locations, like the Marble Rocks near Jabalpur, where the river flows through a deep gorge, and the Dhuadhar Falls. The Narmada River has some interesting sounding tributaries, like the Sher, the Shakkar, the Dudhi, and the Tawa. Most of the tributaries are short and join the Narmada at right angles. Do you recall the drainage pattern here? It forms the trellis drainage pattern. The Narmada River basin spans over parts of Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat. Like the Narmada, the Tapi River also starts in Madhya Pradesh. It originates from the scenic Satpura ranges located in Betul district. The Tapi River flows a distance of over 700 kilometers, covering parts of Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, and Maharashtra. The Godavari is the longest and the largest peninsular river. It starts from Trimbak, located in Nasik, district of Maharashtra. From here, it flows across the Deccan Plateau for about 1,500 kilometers to drain into the Bay of Bengal. The Godavari drainage basin spans across the states of Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, and Andhra Pradesh. The tributaries that strengthen the Godavari are the Purna, the Vardha, and the Pranhita. The major tributaries, however, are the Wainganga, which originates in Madhya Pradesh, the Manjira from Andhra Pradesh, and the Penganga from the Ajanta range in Maharashtra. The Mahanadi River is approximately half the size of the Godavari. It originates from the state of Chhattisgarh and covers a distance of about 860 kilometers to drain into the Bay of Bengal. The notable feature of the Mahanadi is that it runs parallel to the river Brahmani, and together they form one of the largest deltas in India at Paradeep. The biggest tributary of the Mahanadi is the Shivanath River. the drainage basin of the Mahanadi spans over parts of Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and Orissa. The Krishna River is the second largest peninsular river. It originates in Mahabaleshwar and travels about 1,400 kilometers to reach the Bay of Bengal. The main tributaries are the Tungabhadra, the Koyana, the Ghat Prabha, the Musi, and the Bhima. Its drainage basin spans over Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh. Another important river is the Kaveri, which is about half the size of the Krishna River. It originates in the Brahmagiri Hills in the Western Ghats and travels around 760 kilometers to reach the Bay of Bengal at Kadalur in Tamil Nadu. The major tributaries of the Kaveri are the Amravati, the Bhavani, the Hemavati, and the Kabini. Its drainage basin spans over parts of Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. Did you know the Sivanasamudram Falls made by the Kaveri are the second highest waterfall in India? The waterfalls are used to generate hydroelectric power, primarily for the Kolar gold field in Karnataka. The Kolar gold field is the first town in Asia to receive hydroelectric power. Lakes are formed usually as a result of tectonic or glacial activity in a region. It can also be formed by a meandering river or even artificially by human activity. Generally, we associate lakes with mainly scenic beauty and recreational activities like boating, swimming, and other water sports. However, lakes are important to us for several other reasons, like regulating the flow of river water, storage of water during the dry seasons, to maintain the ecosystem, and also the generation of hydroelectric power. For example, the Barapani Lake, located in Shillong, was created as an artificial reservoir for a hydroelectric power project. This project is responsible for supplying a bulk of the power requirement for the state of Meghalaya. The Guru Gobind Sagar in Bilaspur district of Himachal Pradesh was also formed artificially to generate hydroelectric power. The different types of lakes in India are freshwater lakes and saltwater lakes. The Walar Lake in Jammu and Kashmir is the largest freshwater lake in India. It covers an area of about 260 square kilometers. The Walar Lake is the result of tectonic activity. Other freshwater lakes include the Dal in Jammu and Kashmir, the Bhimatal Lake and the Nainital Lake in Uttarakhand, and Lake Koleru in Andhra Pradesh. Lake Koleru provides habitat for an estimated 20 million resident and migratory birds. This lake is officially classified as a wildlife sanctuary. The Loktak Lake is another freshwater lake located in Manipur. It is a unique water body. It is also called a floating lake because of the floating fungus, an organic mixture of soil and vegetation. The largest salt water lake in India is the Sambhar Lake in Rajasthan. The lake is of major economic importance to the state. The salt produced from this lake has made Rajasthan the third largest salt producer in the country. We also have brackish water lakes in India. Brackish water is a mixture of salt water and fresh water. It is not as salty as seawater. Brackish water lakes are generally situated in coastal areas. For example, the Chillika Lake in Orissa is the largest brackish water lake in India. Another example is the Pulicat in Tamil Nadu. Just like the lakes, rivers also play an important role in the economy of India. Rivers are considered the most basic natural resources required for human settlement. This can be traced throughout history. River banks have attracted people to make settlements, which have now grown into big cities. In fact, most cities are located on the banks of major rivers in India. For example, New Delhi is located on the banks of the Yamuna, Allahabad on the Ganga, Ahmedabad on the Sabarmati, Hyderabad on the Musi, and Kolkata on the Hooghly River. These are just some examples. There are over 25 major cities that are located on the banks of rivers. The primary reason is that we depend on rivers for fresh drinking water and water for irrigation. Especially so in our country, where a majority of the population is occupied in agriculture for their livelihood. River water is also used for generating hydroelectric power. For example, the Bhakra Nangal Power Project generates enough electricity to supply to the states of Himachal Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, Gujarat and Delhi. However, the growing demand for water in agriculture, industry and domestic use is affecting the quality of water. More water is being drained out from the rivers, reducing their volume. Untreated waste, sewage and industrial effluents are dumped into rivers. This affects the quality of the water and everyone dependent on these waters. Rivers have a self-cleansing capacity, but even that has its limits. For example, water of the Ganga is able to dilute and assimilate pollution loads within 20 kilometers of large cities. But with increasing urbanization and industrialization along its banks, this process has become almost impossible. There has been some government action to counter this by launching activities such as the National River Conservation Plan (NRCP) and the Ganga Action Plan (GAP). Both these schemes were introduced in 1985, but recently have been merged. They cover 152 towns located on 27 interstate rivers in 16 states. Under this action plan, pollution abatement works have been taken up, and so far a total of 215 schemes of pollution abatement have been sanctioned. The action plan includes targeting 1 million litres of sewage, which is to be intercepted, diverted from the rivers and then treated.